Okaidi, welcome back to my channel, May Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be doing my August TBR. August is going to be a very interesting month for me because I'm going to be going back to the States for a little vacation to see my family for the first time in like 3.5 years. So I'm going to be focusing on the experiences I'm going to have with my family rather than focusing on reading so much. But I will be bringing my Kindle with me, so I do plan to pick up some books. So I've heard a lot of people talk about like a pile of possibilities. That's kind of what this month is for me. We'll see what I can get done, but I'm going to be prioritizing some other things this month. The first book on this list is one that I've actually already started, which is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. I've been wanting to read this series for a really long time. It is an extremely popular self-pub series that people have been singing the praises of since the first book came out. So I know that Ryan also recently released I think it was a novella in the series. So I believe there's 2 books, 2 full installments in the series, and then 2 novellas. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, but I believe that's what's out currently, and I definitely plan to read the whole series if I enjoy the first book. And at this point, I have read the first couple chapters, and I'll be damned, Ryan can write. So I have very high hopes for this book. I think I'm going to enjoy it based on the first couple chapters that I've read, so I'm definitely going to continue that one. The next book that I'm going to read is also a self-pub book, but this one is for Spiffbo. So for those of you who don't know, I am a Spiffbo judge this year with Before We Go blog, and I have to finish reading The 13th Hour. So I did talk more in depth about this book and my thoughts on it so far. My personal thoughts, not reflective of the Spiffbo competition or what the results of that might be, because that is a collaborative effort. But I did talk about my thoughts on it in my July wrap-up, so I'll be sure to link that down below, or please, go check that out if you want to hear more about my thoughts so far on this book. But I do need to finish it this month. The next book is also a self-pub book, and it's one that I've wanted to get to for a long time, and that is We Men of Ash and Shadow by H.L Tinsley. When I mentioned this, I think this was on my TBR for July, and I didn't get to it. But when I mentioned this before, in my previous TBR, I said, I don't really know, like I can't tell you anything about the book because I don't remember details, but it's 5-star vibes for me. Like everyone who's talked about it and everyone who has similar tastes to me, their feedback about it and the elements they say are in the book just sounds really up my alley, and the cover just, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be 5 stars. It speaks to me. Clearly, because it's on my August TBR, I did not get to it in July. So considering that I can access this on my Kindle, which a lot of my self-pub books I read on my Kindle, so there's going to be quite a few self-pub books that we're going to talk about. But yes, since I can access it on my Kindle, there's definitely a possibility that I could get to it this month. Now to move on to a few of the physical books that I would like to get to or finish, considering I'm going to have, a couple weeks book-ended at the beginning and the end of August where I can actually sit down with the physical book. So I do have a couple that I'd like to get to on this list, but pretty much all of them are repeat offenders because I want to get these books read. So maybe pause the video right now and leave a comment which ones you think are going to show up, because like I said, they're repeat offenders. I think there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that are repeat offenders, so take a guess. The first one is The Helm of Midnight. Do I have to say anything? Do I even have to describe this book anymore? The number of times I've described what this book is about in a TBR and then not read the book is just, it's comedic at this point. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So there's a spirit of a serial killer that's in a helm. It gets out. People want to put it back. Sounds really up my alley. Sounds awesome. I've wanted to read it for over a year. I haven't. There's the TLDR. The Helm of Midnight. This next one has been mentioned once or twice, so it's not as bad as The Helm of Midnight, but that is Sapiens, the graphic history. I loved the original book, Sapiens, the novel, and my parents heard how much I loved it, and they sent along this graphic edition, which it's such a floppy book. Every time I open this book, I'm like, oh, this is going to be an amazing reading experience, but essentially it's the content of the novel in graphic novel format, and I really do want to read it. I really do. Maybe I'll start this today, actually. maybe I'll take a break from fantasy and start this today. This is one that I definitely want to get to. I always eye it up on my shelves. Another repeat offender, but I would really like to be able to get through this, and I do think that I can because it's going to be a quick read, I think, once I actually sit down with it, so this one as well. The next book is one that I only mentioned in one TBR, but I was very, very confident I would finish it in July, and then July really did just become indie only, so I didn't read any trad published books last month, which means that I didn't finish The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I'm about halfway through this book and I am enjoying it. This is the Broken Binding Special Edition, so I will not be taking this outside of my house to read it. Like, I'm going to be reading it only when I'm here and safe and at home, which means that it limits the time that I have to pick it up, and also means that I will not be traveling with it. So we'll see if I can get this done this month, before and after my travel. This next physical book is also a repeat offender, but another thing that I want to mention this month is I'm going to be very loosely participating in the Ghibli Readathon. This was a readathon that I truly enjoyed last year. There are a lot of co-hosts that run it, but the person who introduced me to it was Rachel from Let Me in the Library. The Discord has recently come back to life, and all of the announcement videos have come out to say they are going to be doing this readathon again this year. This readathon is set up where each Ghibli movie has 3 different prompts associated with it. So you can try to do prompts for your favorite movie, or, you know, whatever prompts work for you, like a set of 3, or you can do them all in combination and try to do, you know, the bingo board thing. So for me, with time constraints, I'm just going to go for one video set of prompts, and that is, of course, Princess Mononoke. I adore Studio Ghibli films. It's really hard to choose a favorite, but Princess Mononoke is without a doubt in the tippy top tier for me. It's top 3 at least. I don't know if you notice, it's off screen right now, but I can actually, let me just, can I reach? I can barely, there we go. So I always have these little guys in the background, the little kodama from Princess Mononoke. It's always on like the top, go inside. It's always on the top of my bookshelf in the background. So I love Princess Mononoke. So as soon as that was an option, I knew that that was what I was going to be choosing. The first prompt was enemies to lovers, because if you know anything about San or Ashitaka from that movie, it's very much an enemies to lovers vibe. So for this one, it also doubles as that repeat offender physical book, and that is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. Every time I hold this book up, I'm like, oh, I'm going to blow through this. I can read it so quickly, you know? And then I don't read it. So here we are yet again. But I didn't know this had enemies to lovers, actually. But when I was looking up, you know, books that I owned that could work for this prompt, this book was pretty prominent, actually, in the list that came up. So I'm actually more excited for this now, knowing that it's enemies to lovers. So we'll see. I don't know too much about this book specifically, but I picked it up because it is a spin-off series from the Remnant Chronicles, which you can see here, which I adore. And as soon as I heard there was a spin-off series right after reading the original trilogy, I purchased this. But then by the time the book got to me, I kind of had lost my fire for continuing in this world. I still have lots of love for the original trilogy, and I'll probably reread it at some point in my life, but I had kind of lost the fire to continue in the world. So that means that I don't know too much about this particular book, except that it takes place in a world that I really enjoyed. The next Ghibli prompt is something that features nature. So I think they typically mean, you know, the greenish nature. That movie's very green. But for me, I actually went quite the opposite direction, and I decided to go with space. Space is nature, right? It's natural. As natural as you can get, really. Now, I have several reasons for this, one of those being the recent pictures being released from the James Webb Space Telescope. If you don't follow me on Twitter or you don't know, my dad is the deputy project manager, and I'm just so proud of him and the team because they've been working on that telescope for so long, and people have put so much blood, sweat, and tears into making that project happen. So I've just been kind of in a space mood recently because of that. Also, we have a very exciting page-chewing episode coming up, hopefully in September, where we're going to be talking to all of the authors who contributed to the anthology Skybreaker. The subtitle for this is Skybreaker the Wanderer, and there's a very short blurb that I would like to read just to give you a vibe for what the base of this anthology is. And it says, nobody knows what created the tear in the sky, or who caused it. All anyone knew was the tear could be seen everywhere and everywhen. It stretched not just across the sky, but across time itself. Smaller tears began to form around the world. People feared them, used them, investigated them. But the mystery about these tears was dwarfed when a shadowy figure started to show interest in them. A being without form, and known only by a name that caused terror for all who hear it. The Wanderer. This sounds like something I'm really going to enjoy. I've been getting into more like existential horror recently. I think Gunmetal Gods was the first book that really showed that I could enjoy that type of thing. Also, The War Eternal has those vibes as well. And I also recently read Nightfall. And that is like a horror story that has those elements to it as well. So I feel like this is up my alley, and I'm really going to enjoy it. So not only are myself, PL, and Steve on Page Twoing lucky enough to be able to interview the people who have contributed to this, I think it's going to be a collection that I really enjoy. And the third book for the Princess Mononoke prompts for the Ghibli Readathon was a myth retelling. And for this one, I'm giving myself two options. The group read for the readathon is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which I was actually lucky enough to get an arc of back in the day, and then I didn't read it like a dum-dum. So it is a book that I'm very interested in and have wanted to pick up for quite some time. I believe it's a retelling of a Korean myth, I think it's Korean, where there is a monster who needs a sacrifice of a young woman, you know, every year, and the woman that is chosen to be sacrificed ends up going beneath like the water and discovering the world down there, not just simply becoming a sacrifice. And it gives me Daughter of the Moon Goddess vibes, where a character that previously wouldn't have been given much agency in the original story is given agency, and that's something that I really enjoy reading. So I might read that along with the group, or because the lovely, lovely Sarah from the Only Good Book Club is just a beautiful person, she gifted me Piranesi for my 1,000 subscribers kind of celebration, and I'm so thankful because not only is this dust jacket beautiful, but I mean, it spells out Piranesi on the hardcover. Stunning. Sarah, you are a legend. Thank you so much. So I've been wanting to read this for quite some time. It's short, sounds very, I don't know, mystical. Like it gives you a lot to think about. So I definitely do want to get to this, but this one is physical and the other one will be on my Kindle. So we'll just see what time allows. And speaking of the Only Good Book Club, the last book on my list this month is our pick, which is The Black Tulip by Alexandre Dumas. And this is one that I've kind of had far in my periphery for a while. My classics challenge has gone to shit. Like if you were around my channel earlier this year, then you know I was trying to read a classic every month. That has not happened. But this is a classic that I've had kind of on my periphery for a while because it combines a bunch of historical references at the time that I don't really know much about, but I know there was a time when tulips were like the big thing to be selling and buying. Like they were the most popular thing out there. And so this book follows our main character, who is a gardener, I guess, who has curated this special, unique type of tulip that is a black tulip. And I've heard that this story goes into like obsession, the ideas of obsession and insanity and how these things are mixed in with each other, and passion, and I don't know, it just sounds weird. It sounds really weird and something really, I don't know, it's something I've always wanted to pick up. So once this was on the docket as a possibility, I was like, yes, please, let's read that one. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That was a terrible description of what it's about, but you know, it's a classic. It's a classic talking about obsession, insanity, and tulips. That concludes my August TBR, or pile of possibilities. Let me know in the comments down below what you're going to be reading this month, if any of them are the same as what I'm going to be reading. If you've read any of the ones that I've talked about and you have thoughts on them, I would love to talk with you guys in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell. I'd love to have you as part of this community, and I appreciate it. But for now, I'm going to head out. Jane!